we are going to go here for the race introduction to the race that was supposed to be round 4 of the 2026 FIA Formula One calendar, but of course it won't be part of the championship due to the ongoing tensions in the Middle East, but I will still compete in it as I'm doing the concurrent 2025 season, obviously with a great F1 25 simulator. So we will still keep it up, so we will still have the race introduction, we will still have the race reaction, and of course we will also show you the hot lap, the red hot lap, and go through the qualifying and the race which will be pulsating. So this weekend it will be all about the youngest Malaysian champion and all about the new fashion, the Ferrari Team Pro Polo for the 2026 fashion. What do you think about it? It looks very, very interesting. You know, the design obviously, you know, kind of mimics the way the car is designed, but it's really the materials that make it, you know, very, very comfortable, and I cannot wait to wear it for every 4th race. So obviously, the next time we will see it is for Charles Leclerc's home Grand Prix, the Monaco Grand Prix, which I'm sure he will win this year, as you can see on the lovely, lovely 3D calendar over here, or the traditional 2D calendar. So let's take a look at the race introduction over here. So no more racing, but we will still bring you some news over here from the world of the Formula One, as obviously April, you know, for the first time pretty much in decades will be without any Formula One race. Then we will take a look at you know, the circuit itself. Of course, during the hot lap, and especially the red hot lap, you will see how to drive it. So we will, you know, also take a look at the setup, because here, you know, there are obviously many varieties of how to approach Bahrain. It might come as a surprise because you see a lot of the long straights, but yeah, if the Formula One cars would be racing with the F1 26 specifications, I'm sure that would be a hell of a race, especially a great start by Scuderia Ferrari as we went over the testing. So you probably seen that we were the fastest over here. Who knows, maybe that could have been the place where we would have won for the first time in 2026, but hey, winning in Miami, which will be the proper round 4 of the championship, will be even better. So we will take a look at it. And then we will take a look at our historical, you know, achievements, and you know, this the oldest track, you know, here of the Middle Eastern series, which who knows if that will go ahead this year, maybe even for following few years to come. And of course, then we will take a look at the very important parts, which will be the drivers and the constructors championship, right? It will of course be unchanged, as we will then go also to the race reaction, because there will be no race. But again, you know, we will try to, you know, stop by each driver, you know, and discuss a little bit, you know, what exactly, you know, they need to do, especially our Ferrari drivers, for Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton to be the champions. We will also look at the team standings and bring you some news, as we obviously try to go up to the pecking order to make sure we don't only have the fastest starts, but also our fastest in qualifying, but especially in the race. And you know, mostly it will be about me, right, as I will be racing. So we will talk about the achievements, which is why we have these beautiful shiny golden Formula One Grand Prix winners trophies, and we will tell you, you know, everything about how well we've done and what we expect from the 2025 race that we will do concurrently at the same time that the Bahrain GP should have been taking place. Obviously, this would have also been the first night race of the season, so we will have to take that into account when we are actually racing it in our series. It will be important as we are chasing that elusive 5-star Formula One World Championship that only the 5-time Formula One Scuderia Ferrari champion Michael Schumacher, my childhood hero, has won. So, starting with some of the news before I turn around the Scuderia Red Retina iMac, you know, we have to say, you know, not much, but you know, the good update is on Oliver Behrman, of course, the Ferrari junior driver, who is maybe one of the drivers who could take over from Lewis Hamilton, right? Some people think maybe Carlos Sainz still would have a chance to come back, even though I'm not so sure about that. And you know, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, you know, obviously bringing that Italian anthem to life. You know, the funny thing is that if we go back, you know, pretty much, you know, over a year, you know, we haven't heard that Italian anthem 2 times. So, you know, that's definitely something to look for. Leclerc, Antonelli could have been a pretty good combo, you know, in the future. But yeah, for Behrman, you know, he's definitely, I think, the first in the line and doing a fantastic job. You know, this season, obviously, it cost him the 5th in the championship, that shunt. But, you know, thankfully, he hasn't broken anything. So, you know, with that long recovery progress, he's almost 100% to be perfectly fit for the Miami Grand Prix, which we absolutely absolutely love, which will be also the second sprint Grand Prix of the season. Yes, we will also, we are working very hard on the updates, right? So we have a great fashion, but we do know that the car is not maybe particularly strong, especially on the straights, but also we can improve, for example, the aerodynamic efficiency of the active aerodynamics. So there is gonna be a big upgrade. It would have been actually planned for Bahrain, but we can now fine tune it. Obviously, we will. I'm not sure if there will be additional testing, because a lot of the teams are struggling. It's really maybe only 3 teams, and only McLaren really just joining the party, but maybe that was circuit specific in Japan. Of the teams that have really figured out the regulations. So we will see, what happens, how the pecking order will be affected. But we are very, very confident, that during the next, the 2 sprint Grand Prix weekends, we will be able, to compete and keep in touch. Beat the Mercedes-Benz. We've already beaten them fair and square on pace. Just the previous Grand Prix weekend in Japan. And definitely we will have a chance, to do that. Bahrain would have probably been, a bit difficult, maybe similar to how the Australia was. But obviously we are working very hard. It's all about developing the car, making sure that use the resources, and also for the drivers. I think it's very important to do lots of the race simulations and the qualifying simulations, so that we really maximize, the deployment of the energy power, right? It's the 50-50 split, as in Formula One in 2026. And you've seen, for example, when George Russell ran out of the battery, just how slow his Mercedes-Benz would have been. It was an easy overtake for Leclerc, and he wouldn't give it up till the end of the race in Suzuka. So it's absolutely critical that that will go ahead. And I also hope that the rotating rear wing will finally make its debut in Miami. But again, it has to give the stability to the car, and there has to be some extra performance, because it is clear that we are losing pretty much in terms of not having enough speed all through all of the straights. A lot of the times, by the time you get to the final third of the straight, there's usually a big drop off in pace, which is something that we don't want to see as Scuderia Ferrari. Yep, so that would be about the news. And let's take a look at what was supposed to be the 4th Grand Prix of the season. Obviously, Bahrain International Circuit. So over here, let me turn around the Scuderia Red Retina I made, as we will take a look at it. Okay, so here you can see obviously that the flag resembling the Monegasque flag, but obviously it is in this case vertical, not horizontal. So let's take a look at the circuit over here. And of course some of the data that is related to the circuit. So we can see it right up here. We will of course do the hot lap, so stay tuned. This race introduction will be released just when the free practice one was supposed to be going underway, so you won't miss any Formula One action. And heading down the main straight, so obviously we won't have the DRS zone, we will have the straight mode zone, the SM zone. And here it will be important again to protect the lead. Even though if you lose it, it might not be such a big deal, especially if we would be racing as Scuderia Ferrari through turns 1, 2 and 3. This is actually the key to the hot lap. And then in the sector 1, it is important to be early on the brakes, but hit the apex just right. It will be interesting how the active aero cars will handle going through this turn, which was the most challenging turn. Remember, the 4-time champion, just like me, 4-time champion Sebastian Vettel had a big spin over here in this corner. And then this is where we expect to be super strong through turns 5, 6 and 7. Sweeping corners, you can get plenty of time early on the brakes, to this kind of like the first hairpin, the turn 8. It is important to get a great traction over there. We do expect the Scuderia Ferrari to be absolutely flying over here. And one of the even more challenging corners than turn 4. Bahrain does have a lot of challenging corners. It's double apex in turns 9 and 10. When you're basically turning and braking at the same time. So it's important that, to have the brakes set up properly, so that you don't lock up. When you're going there, usually you want to be a little bit light on the brakes, and you simply have to usually listen to the engine, right? Where you are, or you pick a reference point, so that you are able then to get the perfect line, as basically you are not even moving the steering wheel, and you get out of the turn 10 onto the main straight with a straight mode. Again, if we improve the aero, hopefully we will be able, to keep up the distance, and we won't be losing to especially the Mercedes powered cars over here. And then in this area there's a very lovely oasis. Remember, we would have been in the desert as well, so you go through turns 11. It is important, to downshift very quickly, brake very late, take a bit of a curb, and then go through this section and through the oasis, quite I would say remarkably, or quite appropriately, shall we say, you will actually be recharging a lot of batteries if you would be racing with the F126 cars, where usually this would be a perfect mode to harvest as much energy as you can, whereas before usually you would be really pushing the inner curve over here, and then try to get the perfect exit, again riding both inner other curves of the turn 13, going on to the back straight. Sector 3, that is one of the reasons why usually you will run out of the battery in the F126 in this particular section on the start finish straight, because obviously it is important to have as good top speed as possible so you don't get overtaken. Again, going through this corner, it does require a little bit of early braking, and you can be on the throttle early, take out a lot of the curbs. Again, no chance of some strange bottoming out as happened to me, but also some esports, even real Formula One drivers in that unlucky Grand Prix I just had in Japan. So yeah, that would be the Bahrain International Circuit, 57 laps, the distance of 308 kilometers, and yeah, 2004, 22 years now of the Sakhir International Circuit, but I remember it was like yesterday when it made its debut on the Formula One calendar when we were entering our high school years, right? The track is 5.4 kilometers long, and the lap record is being held by De La Rosa, which definitely wouldn't fall this year. So yeah, you can see how it looks like. The paddock is one of the nicest ones. The Bahrain, they designed it very well, and of course, we hope that we will be returning to this lovely place, in the near future. So now, how successful are Scuderia Ferrari were we here in Bahrain? So 7 wins for Scuderia Ferrari, obviously featuring great wins by Michael Schumacher, but only 2 of them. So I actually got already more than Michael. 6 pole positions, 6 fastest laps, 17 podiums. Again, we are kind of pleased that the Bahrain and also the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix are not taking place, because it's the thinking is that probably it would have been still very difficult to beat both Mercedes-Benz cars, and who knows about the McLarens. But again, we always ran strongly over here, so who knows, this might have actually hurt us more than we expected before. So yeah, these would be the statistics that we've gotten here, and this would then be of course, this is our lovely circuit, and then here we then have of course the Drivers' Championship as we look at the Bahrain International Circuit. So the Drivers' Championship, how it looks at the moment, we have the youngest ever leader and the only teenager who has achieved this feat, Andrea Kimi Antonelli of the Scuderia Ferraris Italy, right? So it's very interesting. 72 points, obviously doing a really good job apart from the starts, and yeah, he is really bringing the game to George Russell, who is 9 points behind at 63 points. Russell might be regretting, because I guess he would have been able to gain some points on Antonelli, even reclaim the lead. But yeah, we definitely hope that the championship, like as the boss Frederic Vasseur said, will be a different championship from Miami, which is quite possible. It will be interesting, as the development race is now well and truly on. Charles Leclerc is still within a race distance of, claiming the lead of the championship with 49 points. Obviously, even if we would be heading to Bahrain or Saudi Arabia, or as we will be going to Miami, the goal will be, if Mercedes, especially Antonelli or Russell, if they have any technical issues, remember to what happened in Russell in China, we have to bounce back with a victory. But it's really critical that we finally win the race, because obviously, without winning the races, it's going to be difficult. To keep up, with Mercedes-Benz's. On the other hand, the June is coming. There will be changes to the power units. They kind of frozen at the moment, so that makes it difficult to make the progress on that front. But I think once we have the power unit sorted out, we actually will be the fastest car, because the only place where we are losing to Mercedes-Benz cars is in the straights, as Leclerc said, usually well over half a second. Lewis Hamilton is 4th for Scuderia Ferrari, 41 points. Obviously, big fight between who is the #1 One driver, right? There at Ferrari. So yeah, Leclerc, has kind of claimed it, there in Japan, but it will be Hamilton's, to take us. We will head down to Miami. Fifth is then defending champion Lando Norris McLaren, 25 points. Will be interesting to see, how he can defend the title. Will be, I guess, one of the poorest defenses, in years. Sixth is then Oscar Piastri McLaren, 21 points, and he's ahead of Oliver Behrman, who's 7 for Haas, 17 points. Obviously suffered that accident, but the fact is that even with that accident, he's pretty much on the par with the McLaren boys, and while Haas might not have the outright pace, this is a very impressive performance, and he is easily leading 8 Pierre Gasly of Alpine with 15 points. 9 is then Max Verstappen, Red Bull Racing, how the mighty have fallen with 12 points. 10 Liam Lawson, Racing Bulls, 10 points. 11 is then his rookie teammate, the only rookie on the grid, Arvid Lindbergh, for Racing Bulls with 4 points, and Isaac Hadjar is 12 for Red Bull Racing with 4 points. 13 is then Gabriel Bortoleto for Audi with 2 points. 14 we then have Carlos Sainz for Williams with 2 points. 15 is then Esteban Ocon has 1 point, and 16 Franco Colapinto, Alpine 1 point, who is probably lucky he didn't get collected by Behrman. It was his car, that just like Russell's car, both were Mercedes powered, simply ran out on that hill up going into the spoon, and you could see that the car behind could easily be 50 kilometers per hour. That's 50 kilometers per hour faster. Still to open up the score account in 2026, 17 Nico Hülkenberg Audi, 0 points. 18 we then have Alexander Albon for Williams, 0 points, and 19 Valtteri Bottas Cadillac, 0 points. 20th Sergio Perez Cadillac, 0 points. 21st the first time father Fernando Alonso Aston Martin, 0 points. I guess heading for the retirement, but we will see. If Alonso still sticks around, he will be closer to 50 years of age than 40 years of age. I would have never expected him to race into 2027, to be honest with you. And Lance Stroll, Aston Martin, 0 points. Of course, when you're paying for a drive, sometimes you are just there, the fan at the end. So here, let's take a look at the Constructors' Championship for the 2026 season. Mercedes leading it with 135 points. We are behind on 90 points. So if we would be racing, in Bahrain, we would still be able to claim, the lead of the championship. What do you think? No, because there's no fastest lap. But because we will be going to Miami, and we will definitely, have a chance, to reclaim the lead. As long as you're not more than 58 points behind, you can, win the championship, still. And it will be important, that we, have beaten one Mercedes-Benz. Let's beat one of them, go for a race victories, because this is a very good, healthy haul of points. Third, McLaren, only one good race for them, 46 points, but might have been track specific. Again, defending champions, but I think they probably know they are out of it already. Fourth is then Haas. That's a big surprise, 18 points. So you can see, despite their star driver Behrman out, they are still holding on to that fourth spot, and we will see if anybody can even displace them. Fifth is Alpine with 16 points. Sixth, Red Bull Racing, 16 points, and they seem to be evenly matched. So over here, for Red Bulls, it could be just a fight for fourth. But with unexpected Alpine and Haas, who not so long ago were at the back of the grid, just like in an F1 movie, like the Brad Pitt, that we look like him. Remember, said, if you improve a 10 here, 10 there, 10 in every turn, all of a sudden you can really make it up, up the grid. Racing Bulls, over here classified as 7 with 14 points, and then other teams, struggling to still make it, crack the top 10. 8 Audi, 2 points. 9 Williams, 2 points. 10 Cadillac, of course, new team with 0 points. It would be a huge achievement for them to even get a point, even though the reliability is getting better, as you can see. Even in Suzuka, right, we had hardly any retirement, so that's very impressive, right? So you can see that's the biggest change, in the Formula One. If you go back 10 or especially 20-30 years ago, that most of the cars are finishing. It is great for the fans, right? So that you don't go in and you see your driver being out on lap 1 or lap 15 with a mechanical failure. But yeah, that's actually quite impressive that the teams, even Aston Martin, powered by Honda, at 11th place, at least at home in Japan, they've made it to the end. They are on 0 points, but the reliability is looking pretty good. So over here, it is important to get as many points as you can. This is how the Constructors' Championship looks like. It will stay that way, of course, after we finish the Bahrain, which will not take place. And the same goes for the Drivers' Championship. and this is the Bahrain International Circuit. So over here you might be wondering, how about me, right? So how well have I done here at the Bahrain International Circuit? And the news is better than Michael Schumacher, because I won in 2010, in 2017, and in 2024, right? I also raced in 2016, but finished 5th, and obviously had a torrid race, you know, in the 2023, where I finished at the back of the field. However, in 2025, obviously, we don't want to have always race victory outside of the podium, race victory outside of the podium, race victory. We want to go for the 4th race victory here in Bahrain. Can we do it? Of course we can, and we will really need it, of course, because we are fighting really hard for a championship. At the moment, looks like George Russell is gonna be the main opponent, but again, we will see what will happen. For us, it will be, you know, absolutely critical, you know, to get the race victory over here in Bahrain, but also, for example, pole position, right? As you know, we are chasing over here. We were, you know, on the pole here for the first 2 Grand Prix and last year, so we are chasing our 4th pole position, and you know, we are chasing over here our 3rd, you know, fastest lap. And of course, you know, we want to go for the 4th victory, and overall that would also be the 4th podium, right? Overall. So yeah, I think, you know, it would be very, very important, you know, especially you know, to kind of you know, reclaim you know, the Japanese race, right? You know, because of that strategy, that obviously the car was also a little bit damaged, you know, wasn't ideal. But I believe, you know, if we can stuck to maybe 1 stop again, you know, we definitely have the pace, especially on the hard tires, which is usually a big surprise. That's the tire that we avoided in many of the races in the years gone by. But it works really well in the Concordia 2025 season that I'm playing. So wish me good luck over here, so that you know, we can plant it on our 73rd pole position and go for our 61st victory, and obviously you know, for the 60 I believe that should be the 62nd fastest lap, and of course also you know, the 73rd pole position, 74th podium is definitely on the cards. So you know, that will be our only racing action. And this is what's great about, for example, having, you know, so many augmented kind of Formula One products, right, or entertainment options, because you can be racing, you know, in a real life. It will just be virtual racing. Who knows? Maybe some Formula One drivers will join the action as well. So definitely stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed this special race introduction for the race that won't happen. But you know, it was a great nevertheless, and we will see you very soon for a hot lap, red hot lap, before we go racing in Bahrain. So wish Jan the Smiling Sun champion with this great polo, and check this out, this fantastic over here opening, so that you can put in you know, for example, you know, maybe some you know, secret items for the good luck, right? You know, a lot of the drivers obviously, you know, have a very specific regimen to follow. So yeah, it looks great, very comfortable, and I cannot wait to use it to storm to the victories in the most beautiful, most fashionable cars in the world, Scuderia Ferraris. So you guys, all I can say is, we cannot wait to put the SF1000T818 Formula One Racing Simulator to action. We love racing, we love Formula One, we love Ferrari, Forza Ferrari!